Welcome to The Explainer. You know, every company runs on an invisible script, a story they tell themselves. And today, we're going to look at how one of those stories can lead to a billion-dollar collapse, while another, well, that one can build an empire. It's true. Every single organization, deep down, is just the sum of its stories. That's the narrative that guides every single decision, big or small. And as you're about to see, getting that story right, well, it's everything. It's the difference between a huge success and a spectacular failure.
All right, let's kick things off with a real head-scratcher. I mean, how is it possible for every single department in a company to be absolutely crushing it, hitting their targets, celebrating huge wins, while the company itself is secretly just bleeding cash and heading straight for disaster? Well, this is the story of WeWork. So picture this. It's 2016, you're inside WeWork, the energy is electric. The real estate team, they're signing leases faster than anyone's ever seen. Marketing? Pumping out viral campaigns. I mean, every team is looking at their own dashboard and it is all green lights. On paper, it looked like they were totally unstoppable. But here's the catch, and it's a huge one. It was like all these teams were in the same stadium, but they were all playing completely different games. You had marketing selling this incredible premium lifestyle brand that, frankly, the operations team had no way of delivering. Meanwhile, the real estate team was snapping up properties so fast that the finance folks knew it was completely unsustainable. See the problem? Each team was a champion in its own little world, but they weren't actually working together to build one single sustainable business. So what does that kind of disconnect actually look like in dollars and cents? Well, it looks like this. $1.9 billion. That was WeWork's annual loss. That one number just ripped the mask off. It showed the truth that all those individual team victories were hiding. Investors took one look past all the hype and saw a company that was just fundamentally broken. And that led to one of the most notorious IPO collapses we've seen in a long, long time. Okay, so if WeWork is a cautionary tale about what happens when everyone's playing their own game, how do you fix that? How do you get everybody on the same field, playing for the same team? Well, for an answer, a lot of people have looked to a model pioneered by Spotify. It's a totally different story about how to organize for speed and alignment. The foundation of their entire model is something called a squad. Think of it like a mini startup, right? It's a small, totally self-organizing team, and they have all the skills they need: design, development, testing, you name it, to get a feature out the door. They're built for speed and autonomy. So how does this actually work in practice? Well, it all boils down to a few core principles. And let's just zoom in on one of them: prioritize learning over blame. Now, this isn't just some fluffy corporate slogan. It's a real philosophy. It means if a squad's new feature totally bombs, the first question isn't, okay, who's getting fired? It's, what did we learn and how fast can we use that lesson for our next try? This focus on what they call learning velocity instead of pointing fingers, that's the engine for their innovation. But what's the fuel for this whole model? I mean, what makes this engine run? It's not some fancy software or a complicated management flowchart. It's way simpler. It's a single currency: trust. And what's really fascinating is that this idea, it's not just for tech companies, not at all. Just look at how this exact same idea plays out in completely different fields. I mean, think about the Ritz-Carlton. They tell any employee from the front desk to housekeeping that they can spend up to $2,000 to solve a guest's problem. Right there on the spot, no need to ask a manager. Or look at Zappos. They famously had a customer service call that went on for over 10 hours. And you know what they did? They celebrated it. In every one of these cases, the story the company is telling its people is crystal clear. We trust your judgment. So all of this really brings us to a final critical choice. A choice that every single organization has to make. It's a choice between two fundamentally different ways of operating, two different operating systems, if you will. On one hand, you've got cultures built on that currency we talked about, trust. This is the OS that powers companies like Spotify and Zappos. The story they live and breathe is all about empowerment. And what do you get from that? You get speed, you get real innovation, and you get this incredible sense of ownership from people, something you could never force or write into a policy. But then there's the other side, the opposite, and frankly, much darker operating system. It's a culture built not on trust, but on its polar opposite, fear. And for probably the most vivid and tragic example of this, we have to talk about the health tech company Theranos. See, at Theranos, the story was all about absolute top-down secrecy. If you were an employee and you figured out that the technology just didn't work and you tried to raise the alarm, you weren't listened to. No, you were silenced, intimidated, hit with legal threats. And this wasn't just a case of bad management, you guys. This was an entire system designed to protect a fraudulent story, even if it meant putting the health and safety of real patients at risk.
So when you boil it all down, it really does come back to the story. That's the invisible architecture that shapes everything else. Is the story your company tells a story of siloed wins that are actually hiding a massive collective failure, kind of like WeWork? Or is it a story built on shared trust that really unlocks speed and innovation? Is it a story driven by fear or one driven by empowerment? In the end, every single organization makes a choice. So I guess the only real question left is the one right there on your screen.